how you would be describing what physiologically happens when someone says they're burned out? Because that's a common thing now, right?
I think burnout is such an interesting term because it catches all these different things, right? And burnout can be exhaustion. It can be anxiety and depression. It can be insomnia. It can be an internal sense that like what's happening in my life isn't right, that we actually should pay attention to and not caffeinate or matcha or ashwagandha our way through, right? The body is sending us messages all the time that are really important and powerful. And I find that the first thing to do is actually to listen to that. Am I tired? Do I hate my job? Am I in the wrong relationship? Do I notice that certain things in my body are changing? And maybe I'm, as a woman in perimenopause, and maybe my estrogen and progesterone are dipping. Like, there are so many things that can contribute to burnout. So when I hear someone say that, the digging in is the answer, because it can be so many things. It can be an adrenal issue and cortisol, but it could also be actually somebody who's got super high blood sugar and insulin resistance, hasn't yet manifested in diabetes, but their energy is so up and down that they feel like crap all the time.
Yeah, because I believe you said the body really dictates how the mind would feel. And I would argue that there's a lot of people that argue the opposite, right?
It's both. It's bidirectional.
It's both.
It's both.
So explain to me how when somebody that goes through the same stressor, same environment, one may feel like they're challenged, they're thriving, and the other one is completely burnt out. What's the difference in terms of their psychology and also their physiological makeup that determines those outcomes?
Well, on the physical side, there's a lot we can do to improve our mental health and to get out of burnout. And I see a lot of people skipping this step, which is why I like to talk about the physical side. And then we can talk about the mental, emotional, spiritual side, right? Yeah. But on the physical side, a lot of people are suffering from low levels of key nutrients like B12 and iron and so forth. They have undiagnosed thyroid conditions, hypothyroidism. 1 in 5 women in her lifetime will be diagnosed with, or some kind of thyroid condition. It's really common, but it doesn't get tested for often in the right way, so it gets missed a lot. They could be inflamed. They could have autoimmune conditions where their immune system is attacking their bodies, and it takes 5 to 7 years to get diagnosed with autoimmune, and 80% of that is in women. So it's also something that gets ignored and missed all the time in regular medicine because it takes a deeper workup and takes recognizing it. They could have, like we talked about earlier, they could have taken a lot of antibiotics, been eating a lot of sugar and refined carbs, which has shifted their microbiome to the bad bugs. And then they're getting a lot of the neurotransmitters that are not as helpful, or that's leading to more inflammation in the body. So from nutrients to thyroid to immune to adrenal to just the way people are approaching sleep, right? Sleep consistency has highly correlated with improved longevity, but a lot of people are going to bed at 9 and then at 11 and then at 1 a.m. They're all over the place. Their quality of sleep is really low because they're drinking too much caffeine during the day. I can't tell you how many people, they're having that afternoon coffee, their sleep is completely screwed. And when they just cut that out, and instead of the afternoon coffee, go from sitting at their desk to walking down the street, doing jumping jacks, doing some jump squats in their office, 45 seconds of squats, like every half an hour, every hour will give you such a boost. They're eating too high of a carbohydrate diet, and they're not getting enough protein to stabilize their blood sugar. When those folks add protein into their diet and stop the afternoon caffeine, their sleep like corrects itself. All of a sudden that burnout dramatically goes away. So I think what we forget sometimes is that our bodies are in this incredible engine to heal us. And when we are experiencing something like burnout, it's not always just in the mind or in how we're responding to life. It's also can be these very physical things that we can address to feel better.
Yeah, this makes me think about one of the profound changes in my routine is developing this better relationship with cortisol in general. I've always thought, and I think a lot of people think cortisol bad, cortisol burnout, stress. But depending on the timing of when cortisol spikes and how it decreases over time throughout the day, this really shifted how, I think about working out, what time of the workouts, when to drink caffeine, all of these different things. Can you talk to me about that and what parts of the day we should try to spike cortisol and then that may dictate what we do on our daily lives.
Yeah, cortisol is really interesting. So it actually follows this pattern every day where it's high when you wake up in the morning, and then about midday it should come down, and then it should be low at night. And you don't actually have to spike it. Like, you don't have to do anything for that. That is a healthy body. That's a body that is operating in a good pattern. But here's the mistakes I see people make around cortisol. When our cortisol is high in the morning, that is the time that we're more likely to store fat for fuel. And so a lot of people are having carbs for breakfast, even something like oatmeal, which we were all told at one point.
Cereal too.
Cereal and oatmeal.
Yeah,
it's like those ads from the 90s for Special K, like,
Kellogg's.
Special K, just eat a bowl of Special K and you'll be healthy. And now you look at that and you just like cringe.
Yeah.
But cortisol should be high in the morning. But when it is high, which is what you need it to get up and go. And by the way, you want cortisol to spike if you do have to run away from a lion, or if you do have to mount a stressor. Spiking cortisol is adaptive. It's how we run away. It's how we fight. It's how we mount our stress response when we need that stress response. But when it's high naturally in the morning and we're eating carbs, that's when we're more likely to store fat for fuel, especially fat around our bellies. And so one of the best things people can do is stop eating carbs in the morning and make that meal, whether you're intermittent fasting and your meal's at 11 a.m. or 12, or whether you're eating breakfast at 8 or 8 a.m., let's say, to make sure that meal is really dense in protein and healthy fats and fiber, as opposed to being a carb-based meal, because that's going to stabilize your blood sugar during that time when cortisol is at its peak in the morning. And then what we see on testing is that a lot of people have these funky cortisol curves. They're low in the morning. So if you're waking up and you're like, I'm exhausted every morning when I wake up and I slept for 10 hours, that is a sign that perhaps your cortisol curve has inverted. And what we see a lot is people who have completely flat cortisol curves. I call it the flat line. That's called phase 3 adrenal fatigue, when instead of having that normal, healthy get up and go in the morning, a lot of people, I don't know if you're like this, I'm like this, like I do my best thinking in the morning, I do my best writing, like that's when I'm really the most awake. But, you should have that. And if you don't have that, you might be feeling really exhausted in the morning. The other thing we see a lot is people who have high cortisol later in the day, like in the evening time when they're actually should be going to sleep. And so when we look at folks who are experiencing that, we ask 2 questions. Because usually, again, this is a functional diagnosis. It's not a disease. But we look at, okay, are you having afternoon caffeine? Are you taking supplements that are spiking you? Are you really stressed out in the evenings for some reason? Is your sleep schedule really changed? I have a couple close friends who are artists, and I don't know if they are artists because of this or if it has nothing to do with it.
If the environment made the mind
they're always like, and then my mind turns on at 10 p.m. I work until 3 in the morning and I paint until 3 a.m. And like, I'm always just like, I can't, my body just doesn't do that. And I've tested a couple of them and they do have these evening cortisol spikes. And so for some people, maybe that's adaptive. Hey, if you're painting all night and that's what you want, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
But if it's interrupting your ability to fall asleep or stay asleep, we're going to want to look at your diet, your hydration, your nutrient levels, some of your evening practices. Maybe now is a time to like wind down and meditate instead of diving back into work after dinner. Different things to help people reset that diet and what should be a normal diurnal cortisol curve. And on cortisol, there's a lot of tests on the market right now that'll like test your blood and give you results. A lot of them include a cortisol. It drives me nuts because you shouldn't be testing cortisol that way. If you're screening for disease, you might test for cortisol that way. But if you're looking at just a random cortisol level at any point in the day, it's just not a helpful metric. You need to be looking at cortisol in what we call a diurnal pattern and in a 4 to 5 point cortisol metric using urine or saliva over the course of a day.
Right, because if the normal cortisol spike is supposed to be in the morning,
Right.
and then it turns out at the night, if you
people go for these tests at like all sorts of times. Like
Sure,
they go
exactly.
at like 2 p.m. and it's like a random cortisol is just not useful.
Yeah.
So when we launched at Parsley our longevity labs last year, which is available nationally, we intentionally cut out a couple of tests that are, let's say, common today on some of the direct-to-consumer tests, because we understand the medicine and which tests you should be running in certain ways and which tests really need to be run in other ways.
What are some of those? So what are typical tests that most of society deems or thinks are useful? What are the ones that are kind of BS? I'll say it. And what are the ones that are particularly useful that maybe not included in a typical pre-check?